Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make this laced beaded macrame bracelet, and this is what it looks like. So you have your macrame running down the middle there, just a simple square knot we've used, and then we've added our beads on the side here to get this kind of lacy effect where they're intertwining with each other. So that's what it looks like. So it gives a really nice effect, and it's also nice and easy and comfortable to wear. And it'll look a little something like this on, the one I've made here anyway. Obviously different materials will give you a different look, all depending what you want. So that's what it looks like. So if you want to learn how to make this bracelet, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be using. First of all, here we need our cord. Now this is a Chinese knotting cord, and it's just a nylon one, and it's about a 0.9mm in thickness. And this is just a nice purple colour that I'm using. You can obviously choose whatever you want to. And then we need our beads as well. So these are both regular rounds, two different sizes, and the silver metal spacer beads, just what I thought would match nicely with the cord that I'm using. The first ones here are 4mm rounds, so these are the larger ones. And then I'm using some 3mm rounds as well. And the 3mm rounds here are the ones we're basically going to be used to add as the embellishments. And then to finish off my piece, I'm going to be using these cord ends here. So they look like this. They're almost a little horseshoe shape from the end, and you then clamp them down. It's going to give a nice and professional finish and also durable, and you have a little loop so you can attach your findings. I'm using a lost dog claw clasp, extended chain and some jump rings. You can obviously choose whatever you want to. So let's get it all together and let's get started. Now then, the cords that we'll need is first of all here some lengths for our holding cords, and here I have 5 lengths of about 50 centimeters each, and they're going to be the short ones that we're going to be using. And then I have another length of my cord here that's longer, and this is about 2.5 meters. So this is going to be the working cord throughout. So what I then did is I took all my lengths of my holding cords here, so the 5 short ones, and I added them onto my macrame board. So this is just the mini one that I'm using. It's got all these notches all the way around. So I just put them all together, and on one end I attach them there and also on the other end, because like I said, these are going to be mainly the holding cords, and especially right at the beginning, so just to make it easier to work with. And then what we need to do is start out, so I'm going to take the long length, the single one, and we need to first of all find where the middle is. So I'm going to put both ends together like that, and then here where I'm holding I had the loop, that's roughly the middle, and then we need to attach this working cord to all these holding cords here to get started. So I'm going to take one end while I'm holding on to the middle, bring this underneath like this and all the way through, so the midpoint here is going to lay below all these holding cords, and then we need to attach it by using a square knot. So like I said, now this working cord is underneath the holding cords and coming out to each their own side. So I'm going to take my left cord, bring it over all the holding cords, and then my right one goes over that and then underneath everything in the middle. So I'm lifting up my holding cords there and then up at an angle, so I'm pulling it then up through the loop on the first side, just like that. And just try to make sure the first one here, the midpoint of this working cord stays underneath, and then we tighten this, and then that's basically attached, and it's going to be much easier to work with. And this is the first half of a square knot. So now I'm going to take my right cord, do the same thing, put it over, left one goes over that, underneath everything in the middle. So I'm lifting up all my holding cords, and make sure you go underneath all of them and up through the loop on the other side. And then we tighten this as well. And this is then the other half of the square knot, so we now have one full complete square knot. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing now, a couple of square knots before I start adding in any beads. So just do about 4 or so. So we have a little section here at the end before we start adding in the beads. So now that I made my 4 square knots here at the top, we reach the point where I want to start adding in some beads. So what I need to do first of all here is I'm releasing all my holding cords. So I've got these 5 short cords here, because we just need to separate them out a little bit, because we're not going to continue having all these 5 as the holding cords throughout. We're going to be using these as well to add the embellishment. So I have the 5 cords here, and then what we need to do is separate some out now and then completely out from the holding cords as well. But what we always need to make sure to have is one left in the middle. That's going to be the holding cord throughout constantly, so we do need to have one of them. So that's just the middle one here, and then we have the other ones to the side. Now the first thing we need to do to separate out some cards is I also just need to use some beads. So we now have 3 on each side, one of them here. These long ones are the working cards. So remember which ones they are, but obviously they're long ones so you can always separate them out. And I'm going to grab one of my 4mm rounds here. And I'm just using metal spacer beads. If you struggle to find beads here that have got large enough holes to have multiple lengths of cord through, I do recommend trying metal spacer beads because they tend to have pretty large holes. Because what we need to do actually is get 3 cords through this bead. So I just start with one here, put it through, and then you just want to grab the next one from the same side, get that through as well. And I'm just going through in the same direction because, like I said, this is in partly to obviously get the beads going to get the pattern started, but also then to be able to separate out the holding cords and get on to the next step. Then I'm going to take the working cord as well and also get that through. And what can also help, just want to mention a little tip, is if you're using a synthetic cord like me, this is nylon cord, you can just use a lighter to singe the ends. So just gently warm it up a little bit, and then you can roll it and you get like a little needle on the end. That really helps coming through tight spaces in the beads as well. So get that through, as you can see there, and pull all the way through. And then we have, I just got tangled in that, one bead on these 3 cords, and then just push that all the way up, and it's going to sit right there. And obviously you can just separate out the long one so you know which one that is. And then you want to do the exact same thing on the other side. So I'm just going to add my bead onto these 3 lengths of cord on the opposite side as well. So now that I have both my beads on here, and we have the 3 cords on each side, the top ones here are my long ones, so these are the working cords. We obviously need to keep using them, so remember which ones they are. And then what we need to do now is separate out 2 cords. So this is 2 of the holding cords, 1 on each side, so that means the shorter ones. And all I'm going to do is just put them out to the side and kind of get them out of the way so we don't end up tangling them up with some of the other ones here. So just put them out of the way, and then I have these 2 left, also holding cords. All I'm going to do with them is bring them down and join them back up with that middle one that we still have left, just like that. Because we need to then separate these out as well, but not until the next step. So now we're here, we've got 3 holding cords now. Remember, you separate them out, and now we then need to continue making some knots. So I'm then going to take my left working cord again, because I'm going to start with the same one throughout. So just keep starting with the same one when you make a new knot. Bring that over the middle one, so the holding cords there. Then take the right one over that, underneath everything in the middle, and up through the loop. And this is just the exact same knot that I showed you before. Then we need to tighten this right up underneath the 2 beads there. And then the other side to complete the knot. Remember to go underneath all the holding cords and then tighten this. And then we have the beads caged in place as well. So they're sitting there nicely now. And then we need to make a couple more knots here. I'm going to be making 3 in total. So that was 1. I'm going to make another 2 until I then reach the point where I want to add in the next bead. So when I then have my 3 square knots here, then I'm going to add another bead, and this time it's just a single bead. So I want to add one of my beads, the same ones here, onto my 3 holding cords now. So I've added it here, and then I'm going to be pushing this all the way up, right underneath there, and reattach your cords. And then we just need to cage this in place. This is just a little extra, you could say, in between the other sections where we add the double beads. So I'm going to do another square knot to cage this in, the exact same way, just like that. And then here on this side of the bead, underneath it here, we also want to have 3 square knots, just as we do on the other side, because then we reach the point we want to add in the double beads again. So then now to add in those beads here underneath those 3 square knots, we'll basically need to do the same thing as we did up here, but now the difference is we just have these 2 cords less because we already separated them out. But now what we need to do is I'm going to be separating the holding cords, 2 of them here, because these are the next ones I also want to separate out in the same way as I did here. And then what we need to do that is add 1 bead to each side, but I'm going to be adding it to both that holding cord on that side, but also then the working cord, putting that through it as well. So the same as before up here, except instead of putting 3 cords through, we're only having to put through 2 of them now. like that, push it up, and then you can then separate out the short one, which is the holding cord, and do the same on the other side. Add your bead onto both cords and push it all the way up, and then we can separate out the short one because then they're ready as well, just like that. And then we're going to be using the two long ones on each side, one on each side here. So the working cords that we've been using throughout, make sure you keep using the long ones for the working cords, and then tighten this all in place so these beads stay where they are by making another square knot, just like that. And then the other half to make it one complete. So there we go. So now we have in these two sections where we separated out the cords, they're coming out from the beads and they're then ready to start adding the embellishment when we need to do that. But I want to get a longer section here made because obviously we need more of these sections to be able to then add the embellishment to as well, because we're going to be using these double beaded sections throughout to do that. So again, I'm just going to be making 3 square knots in total here, and then I'm going to be adding in my single bead again in the middle, and then 3 square knots here, the exact same way as here, except we now only have one holding cord left. So we have a few less cords to worry about. And then all we're going to do is continue making the double sections as well with the beads, but we're just going to be doing it only on the working cords. So now just to show you one more time here, adding in the next double beaded section, just because we now don't have any more cords we need to worry about separating out. So it's much simpler now. That just means these are the 2 working cords. I'm going to be adding 1 bead on each side on those working cords, just like that. And then you just want to make your square knot. So it's really simple once you've separated out your cords here. And then you just cage them in place by making your square knot again. And there we go. And there you can see the pattern as well as forming nicely. We have the double bead, single bead, double bead, single bead, and so on. And that's what it's going to be like now. So just keep doing this now, just having the 1 holding cord left until you reach a good length. Now you don't need to do it to the whole length just yet, because we also need to bring these holding cords that we separated out back in again at the end. So get to almost the length that you want your bracelet to be. And then obviously we need to start working on adding the embellishment. Keep doing the same pattern here, and then I'll show you that step. So I now kept making my piece here, adding in these sections with double beads and single beads until I reach the point where I've almost gone the full length of my macrame piece here. But like I said, before we complete the full length, we have to just stop a little bit while we still have some macrame left to do, because we then also have to bring in these cords that were left out again. So where I've ended up is I've done a single bead, and then the next one I'm going to do here is a double bead, and then another single and a double. So basically I'm going to have 2 doubles left to do with a single in the middle, and that's where we need to start bringing in the other cords from the top. So I just got that little section. So basically from one double to the other is what the length left there is there to add, but we need to add in these other cords in the meantime of doing that. So I'm going to go back to the top here, and then we need to go back, first of all the top ones, and then start adding the embellishment beads onto them as well while bringing them all the way down. So we need to go to the top ones first of all. So that's the ones coming out of the double beads up there, the very first ones we did. And I want to add my 3mm beads now onto these ones. So what I'm going to do is I've already added them here for sake of speed. And what I've done is we need to add enough beads to jump to the next one we need to go through. So I'm going to push them all the way up here, and I have 14 beads because we're coming from the first one. We need to skip the next double bead because that's where the other cords are coming out from, and then go down to the next one after that. So basically skip one, and that fits nicely with 14. So then take the end of my cord here, and again it really helps if you kind of singe the end and made it into a bit of a needle, and then skipping that next double bead where the other cords are coming out from and going through the next kind of available one on the same side where this cord is coming from. So I'm sticking on the left side, and then I'm going to take the cord where I just added all my 3mm beads onto and go through that outer bead that's already in the macrame, just like that. And then it's going to sit along the side there, and we're going to be doing the exact same thing on the other side. So the top one on the right, I've also added 14 of my 3mm rounds, push them all the way up there, then take the very end of that cord and go through the bead and the same double bead there, but on the other side, sticking to the side where it's coming from. So just go through it and pull it all the way down, and then you have the beads on that side as well. So that's now the position. So now what we need to do is add beads to these cords. So now the ones that were the bottom ones before have now turned into the top ones. So what I'm going to do is again add 14 beads on each length of these cords. So again, I then added my beads here, the 3mm rounds, and 14 again on now the top two cords, one on each side. I'm just going to push them all the way down, all the way up till right below the bead that's in the macrame, like that. And then again, this is on the left side. I'm going to jump over the next double bead, which is the one we just went through with the other one. So I'll jump over that to get that kind of interlaced effect, and then go through the next one on the same side. So staying on the left of the double beads there, pull it all the way through, just like that. And the same with the other side, pushing my 14 beads all the way down, and jumping over the next double bead. And also by doing that, I'm naturally jumping over the cord that's lying here. That's the next ones we're going to use and add beads to. Naturally jumping over them to get them in the right kind of intertwining with each other, over and under, and jump through the next bead that's already in the macrame here. Just get your cord right through. Can be a little bit tricky, but like I said, just singeing the end, making it into that little needle. If it's a synthetic cord, it really does help. And pull that all the way through. And then you have that sitting nicely, just like that. And then you can see you're getting that effect of the beads kind of interlacing over and under each other. And then you basically just want to keep doing this. So it's now, they're swapped places again. Now the next ones that we need to use are the top ones that are currently there. So I'm going to add 14 beads on each of the top ones now, jump over the next double, go through them underneath there, and basically keep doing that until I get towards the bottom here. So keep doing that until we reach this point where the next ones we need to go through are the ones down here that we haven't added into the macrame piece yet, because that's what they're going to do to then also bring them together again. So now that I've reached this point down here where the next beads that I've added to my cords on the side that I want to bring in, I don't have the two double beads there, the double beads in the macrame to go through. So what we need to do is this is where we need to add them as we're then bringing these in. To do that, I'm just going to do one side at a time. The card here with all the beads on, what we need to do is grab another bead and put that cord through that. So that's one of the 4mm rounds, because those are the ones we used when we were making the macrame. And what I'm also going to do is take my working cord on the same side, so on the left in this case, and put through the same bead in the same direction. So both of those two cords are going through. So we're skipping over the next ones here still, because we're going to be doing the same with them, but after we've done this step, and then push the bead all the way up there, and then want to do the exact same thing on the other side. So take your 4mm round and take the cord with all the beads on, and then the working cord through the same bead there in the same direction, and then push it all the way up. Don't worry too much about these cords, the short ones, being too tight just now, because we can still pull them through after. And then to cage this in, we need to make a square knot here. But what we need to do is obviously bring these back into it. So instead of leaving them out to the side, I'm going to bring them in, whether you want to bring them under or over the working cords, and then bring them in to be with the holding cord that we already have. So if you remember the beginning where we were taking the cords out as we were doing this, now we're doing the same thing, but we're bringing them back in. So just make sure we now have these three holding cords. That includes the two that are going through all the beads here along the sides. And just make sure that those two 4mm rounds get pushed all the way up before we then now take the working cords, and make sure you take the working cords, the long ones, and make a square knot to cage them in. Make sure you go underneath all the cords in the middle and make a square knot. Just want to make sure it's tight before I tighten the knot completely. And then you tighten that nicely underneath those two beads, and then make the other half of the square knot. just like that, and then they sit nicely in place. Now what I'd just like to do is release the two cords that are the ones I used on the side, and before I make any more knots, just tighten these again, because we can still do that now while we have this single knot, just so we don't have any loose cords showing along the way. So pull them nice and tight, and then what we need to do is make a few more square knots, because we still got to keep the same pattern. So that means we need to have those 3 square knots between each added bead into the middle here. So I need to make another 2, then I add my single bead, and then I make another 3 square knots, and then we're at the point where we need to add the beads to the other short cords here on the side. Basically need to do the exact same thing again. And then again, to show you the very last one here, I've done the exact same thing. So I added my beads on the side, the 3mm ones, and then I added my 4mm ones on each side, and I put both of my cords that I have left through it. So the short ones where I added the small beads, and then also my working cords there. So you've got to do the same thing. Make sure you bring the short ones that you've been using on the side back in with the holding cords. So we're going to go back up to having the full amount of holding cords that we started out with as well. And then now you just want to make sure to push up the 4mm rounds there, just like before, against, right up underneath the knots there, your last square knot. So just hold against on the working cords, then use your working cords to make another square knot underneath to tighten them in, so they're going to stay in place. Just like that, one full square knot here, and then that's going to sit nicely. Then what I'm just going to do, just like before, is I'm just going to release the last 2 cords there that I just added in, and just pull at them again, just to make sure that there's going to be no loose cord left, because this is the last ones. So pull them nicely until you're happy, and then we want to make sure to make the same amount of knots here at the end as we started out with on the other end. So in that case, I started out with my 4 knots, so I'm just going to make another 3 here to finish on the same amount, just to make it nice and symmetrical. And then once you've done that, then basically the main macrame part here is done. So this is then what the main piece looks like. So you have your macrame running all the way down in the middle, where we're also adding the beads there for the extra embellishment, but then also the extra beads that we added on the side with this kind of lacy effect to it. So that's what it looks like. It gives a really nice effect. And obviously you can make it look however you want to, depending on what materials that you use. And also what I just want to mention is the amount of beads that I used here are the ones that suit the materials that I used, because how I wanted it to look as well. If you use different materials than me, you might have to add a different amount of beads on the edge from one section to the other. So you just have to adjust that, kind of figure out on yours, and then you can use the same ones all the way. So that's what it looks like. So all that's left to do now is finish off the ends. Now I'm going to be using some cord ends to do that. It gives a nice, neat, professional finish. But you can also use a macrame finish, that's completely up to you. I already have a tutorial where I show how I finish off bracelets in those 2 different ways. I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below there. But I'm going to finish that off, add my clasp as well, and then you'll have the finished bracelet. So this is then what the final piece looks like after I've attached my clasp and my extended chain here using the cord ends. Then obviously you can then use a clasp when it's ready to wear. It's going to sit nicely like that. Be nice and easy to wear as well because of the clasp. You can obviously add whatever clasp you want to. Like I said, you can also do the macrame one, that's completely up to you. And then it looks like this when it's on. So you get this really nice effect of the macrame in the middle, and then with your beads intertwining on the side. Almost a bit lacy. So that's what it looks like. So a pretty easy technique as well. Just adding in those beads on the side in the right way to get that effect. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching.